When I smoke weed around other people, I get like extremely retarded and like just really weird. And I feel weird. I'm probably looking normal. But besides that, my visualization, like my ability to see things in my head, and this will be really unstructured, but the ability to see things in my head is really clear. And I think the retardness and like the really good imagination that I don't normally have when I'm like sober is because it's just breaking down your walls in your brain, right? It's obviously lowering your inhibition. So when I get high, I'm not gonna start like rambling about my deepest, darkest secrets and all that. But I feel like I just have less like walls in my brain. And I feel obviously you don't want to have to smoke weed or do drugs to get creative or get your imagination back or get good visualization because a lot of people have shit visualization or they have no visualization so they can't see anything in their head and they have like that aphantasia shit. But I feel just from thinking about that a lot, there's several reasons why you've kind of lobotomized your own fucking brain, bro, and you've kind of ruined your childhood imagination. And thinking about what happens to my brain when I smoke weed made me realize that. And I think there's a few reasons for this. I'm not gonna tell you it's all just because the internet and phones. I know it's so easy for people to talk about that, bro, right? This will once again, this is not like structure or anything, but I hate how people just talk about you're not creative or you can't visualize because you're being bombarded with information from your phone and it's all the internet's fault, which is true to a very large extent. When you get off your phone or any device for like a solid hour or two and do nothing, you're gonna realize that you're really creative and you have a lot of shit going on in your head because like you are being overloaded with information. But I know some iPad kids, bro, or some people who are around my age that were basically iPad kids and still are. And they're constantly on the internet, like even more than me. And I'm a chronically online fucking hermit, and I've been that way ever since I was a little kid. But there's some people who've always been fucking iPad kids, bro, and they have insane visualization. Like they have hyperphantasia, right? So they can see anything they want in their head. And so I don't think it's all about the internet and devices. I think it's, you know, I think you have more creative power and you have such a good ability to visualize things and see things in your head and come up with crazy things in your mind, bro. Like much more than you realize, much more than you realize. And I don't think it's just because you grew up and by growing up you lose your visualization because you probably had much better imagination as a child, right? That's normal because obviously when you're an adult, you don't want to grow up and be constantly immersed in your imagination, because then kind of your life will kind of be like, will be kind of fucked. Because like, yeah, you'll be homeless on the street, but it's cool because you're in your own fantasy world. You know what? That could be fun. I fuck with that, but no, obviously you don't want to be in that situation. So your brain's naturally gonna stop you from doing that. Because it's just like it makes logical sense. But I feel your brain is much more creative than you realize now, and it's just kind of dormant. And you can unlock this by firstly just realizing that there's a lot of things you're probably doing to your brain, even if you didn't realize, that are basically lobotomizing your fucking creativity, bro. And a couple of these are thought suppression and emotion suppression as well. And the constant being on devices and shit because you're not letting your brain think, I guess. It's also, I've noticed, there's like a fear of your own brain. People have a fear of their own imagination when they become an adult. And I've noticed I had this as well. I noticed this, a great way to notice this is when we talk about tulpas, bro. And you know, tulpas are like imaginary friends people create, generally adults, that talk back to them. So it's like you have a person in your head that's talking back to you. And of course, writers get this as well with their characters that they're writing. And I realized this the other day when I looked in Discord and I saw some people talking about tulpas. They were scared of it. And I also had this same thing. They were scared of it. And they were saying, that's so fucking schizophrenic, right? That you would have someone in your head talking to you. Isn't that schizophrenic? And I'm like, bro, it's just your imagination. Like, it's literally like, yeah, it seems like you're talking to someone in your head. And that seemed kind of schizophrenic or something, but it's literally your own brain. And there's this fear of like your own imagination people have these days. And they think if they have something in their brain going on that they're not consciously controlling, that's really scary. And they need to get rid of that and they need to suppress that thought. And I think a lot more people are doing this than they realize. It's like they're in the back of their head, constantly on guard for any intrusive thoughts or anything like that. And they're suppressing them when actually that's really good for creativity. And they're suppressing this natural, divine fucking power, bro, in their head. And I guess to an extent this is good because why were you scared of the dark when you were a child, bro? You were scared of the dark because your little child brain is thinking there could be a ghost in the dark, there could be a monster in the dark, and then obviously you grow up and you get more logical and you think there's obviously nothing in the dark, right? That was just my brain kind of making that up. So in a way, things like that are good, but I think we suppress these things to an extreme degree that's actually hindering our creative abilities. And see, for me personally, it wasn't always. I don't want to turn this into like a therapist session or like a trauma dump, but it wasn't always, oh, I think there's something in the dark. It's more like when I grew up as a teenager, I was like, if there's a demon in the corner of my dark room, I'm just gonna fuck it, bro. I'm just gonna fuck it if I see it. Okay, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but another thing is emotional suppression and thought suppression, and I was thinking about this. And I may be retarded, I may be wrong on this, but why do females seem to have better visualization? And of course, a lot of men and a lot of boys are good at visualizing and they're artists and they're very creative. But doesn't it seem to you that just girls in general seem to deal with things more internally? And I feel like you will see more girls as artists and more girls doing like creative things. And of course, that could be because their brain works completely differently. But I feel in a way, what if a lot of it is about emotional suppression and dealing with emotions? And it's the thing about like how boys shouldn't show many emotions, or a lot of people now criticize that. Most people now criticize that and they say, like, of course a boy should cry if they want, or they should show emotions if they want. And of course, a lot of girls as well suppress emotions, and a lot of girls don't feel safe showing emotions and whatever. But I feel like on a whole, it's more acceptable and normal. Maybe that's just how their brains work as well, for girls to show their emotions more and be more emotional. And just because, of course, just because you're not showing emotions on the outside, that doesn't mean you're not feeling emotions, right? But I just thought about this from my experience as a child, because I've really been thinking about why my visualization got so arse as an adult. And a lot of it's because I was talking to Nyx about this. Nyx, my Discord e-kid. No, she's cool. I love Nyx. We all love Nyx. She knows lots about psychology. And she was talking to me about emotional suppression and shit, because I suppress emotions a lot. And I did this when I was a child, and I remember seeing a kid crying, and I remember seeing this boy crying, and I wasn't like sad for him. I more had secondhand embarrassment that he was showing his emotions. And so I've always been like that. No one told me I shouldn't share my emotions, right? No one actually told me that. It's just like, I never wanted to show my emotions, and since I didn't want to show my emotions, like crying, also happiness, not just sadness, happiness as well. It's like I never wanted to show I was happy, so I suppressed that part of my brain, and I feel like that really affected my creativity and my visualization as well. And I'm saying this, I'm not trying to turn this into a fucking trauma dump. I'm saying this because you may be doing it whether you realize it or not, and this may be hindering your creative abilities. Another thing is thought suppression. A lot of people, you don't really do this when you're a kid because you don't feel you have much control over your mind. But aphantasia, which is when people can't visualize shit. So you tell them to see an apple in their head, bro. I don't know if you can see an apple in your head if I say this to you, but people with aphantasia can't see an apple in their head. But a lot of the times, aphantasia can actually be caused by trauma or depression. I wouldn't say I had trauma, but I grew up and had a lot of emotions and thoughts that obviously I didn't want. And so instead of sitting with those thoughts, I thought the best thing to do would just be get rid of them. Like, get rid of the thoughts and suppress them. So the good thing was that eventually it turned out I could just suppress my emotions and not feel anything and not think anything. And so that also hindered my creativity and my visualization. Once again, I'm saying all this because you may be doing it without realizing, if that makes sense. You may be actually suppressing thoughts that you don't want, but you don't realize, bro, that that's actually affecting other parts of your brain. And so, for an example, I had this thing when I was like 16, 17, and of course I was very isolated. And I always had this thing where I would talk to someone on the internet. I would talk to a girl would message me on the internet, hello, and then, okay, cool, hello, what's up? Then I would go walking the next day and start fantasizing about how I'm gonna marry this person and spend my whole life with them. And like, I get into these like really deep like loops of fantasizing about the stupidest, smallest shit, bro. And it wasn't just that, it was really about anything. In fact, ironically, I tend to overthink and be more emotional than I think most people were. I think I actually had more emotions than most people were, than most people had, sorry, and that scared me, so I cut it off and like suppressed it and try to make myself not think that. And then my dumbass is reading a book 2 years later, and I'm like, why can't I visualize the characters? Why can't I visualize the events in the book? Why aren't I creative? And why can't I come up with shit in my brain? Bro, it's because I fucking suppressed a bunch of this shit. Because I didn't like feeling it, and I didn't like thinking a lot of these things. And you may be doing this. And you know what? If you don't think you're doing it, I think everyone is doing this to some degree. And everyone does this as you grow up. Because like I said, when you're a teenager, you realize you shouldn't be letting your brain run wild and thinking about all this stuff. But I feel ironically, we've gotten so much control over our brains that it's like messing with our creativity. Like, we think if we have 100% control over our brain and our thoughts, then we will be creative and be able to do all this shit and visualize better. But I think it's the opposite, and that we need to let go of our control a bit, which I think is why, bro, fostering things like hypnagogia and, you know, the state before you go to sleep where your brain is kind of running wild and it's not being inhibited by all these walls you put up. I think that can be useful to like foster that state. And I've talked about that before. I made like a video on that. It is also the thing with the phones. It is also the thing. I just don't want to act like that's the whole reason why we've lobotomized our fucking brains. But that is a big part, because you should do this today, bro. Actually, you should do this today or whenever you have time. Turn off your phone or your computer and just sit alone for an hour or two, and don't read. Don't even fucking read a book, bro. Don't meditate. Don't try and do anything. Don't do anything. Don't play a card game. Don't think that just because you're off your phone or whatever, it's better to read. Literally sit by yourself with nothing, bro, for an hour or two, and you will realize once you do this that you start getting a lot of really creative thoughts, because it's like your brain is finally by itself for so long. And to compensate for all the social media and the Instagram reels, to compensate for that, your brain wants to entertain itself and it wants to come up with things itself. So you'll either find that you come up with a lot of really creative ideas and you're trying to solve some problems, or you will find that you start fantasizing about some world in your head and you start having these kind of fake scenarios in your head, which isn't necessarily bad, which isn't bad at all. And I think from time to time, just sitting by yourself and doing nothing is really useful. what's the point of me saying all this shit? Honestly, what's the point of me saying this? I'm saying that like we've lobotomized our visualization, but I'm not really even giving you like I'm not telling you how to fix it. And I guess that's the point, is that I don't necessarily know how to fix it completely, because I guess it's kind of hard to. And this is another critique of school I have, is that when you're a kid, you're playing and you're in your own fantasy worlds and you're really creative. You know, I think there was actually a study. I can't remember who did this, but it was a really, maybe it was NASA. No, I don't want to say if it was them, because I'm gonna find the link to this and put it in the description. There was a study showing that on like some problem, children were much more creative and better than solving it, not coming up with some bullshit thing, solving a creative problem than adults were. It was like adults had their creativity completely fucking erased, and that's disgusting to me. And I actually would disagree if someone said that's natural. If someone said that's just because you grew up and your brain does that when you're an adult, that's very unnatural. And what I was saying about school is that you get in school and you're told to stop daydreaming, focus on the class, focus on the teacher, focus on the front of the classroom. Stop fucking around. Stop playing around with your friends. Stop imagining shit. Focus on the teacher and look at these fucking words and figure out this logical maths problem. And so that's very disgusting to me. And what I realized when later in my time at high school, when I stopped going to high school and I kind of just started skipping it because it was making me so depressed. You know what I realized after that? Is that when I stopped going to school and stopped caring about school, I suddenly seemed to regain this curiosity in my brain. I suddenly wanted to learn. By learn, I mean go and find knowledge myself and read shit myself. I don't mean have someone at the front of a room tell me what to put in my head and spoon feed me information. And so I think I think everyone will realize this. If they stopped being bombarded with information, not just from your phone, but from places like school, you're going to unlock this natural curiosity that you had when you were a kid, but lost because you had information overload. Studies show if you're overloaded with information, you're not going to want to, you're not going to want to go out and learn new information. And being overloaded with thoughts, which is another thing, being overloaded with thoughts is worse than. Think about freedom of speech. Think about freedom of speech. Being free to say whatever you want. You obviously don't want to have people infringe on your freedom of speech. Is it not worse? Is it not a worse fucking travesty to have people infringing on your thought? Is it not more disgusting to have people infringing on your freedom of thought and trying to, whether you're learning something or not, is that not infringing like the most basic human right to be free to think what you want? And that is what shit like school and social media and being bombarded with this information from everywhere is doing. So I hate that people will talk about imagination and visualization and say, oh my God, our visualization is shit because of social media. How about your visualization is shit because since you were a fucking 5-year-old, you've had someone at the front of a classroom bombarding your brain with information and punishing you when you don't go along with it. How about stop focusing on social media and start focusing on that? But of course, people don't want to think about that. Oh, because you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh my God, you probably watch Andrew Tate. You don't support the education system. And I was actually, when I was 15, I started sorry, this is going like kind of derailing. I started writing a whole essay and I started getting research and I started getting sources on the history of the schooling system and the negative effects of the schooling system on a child's brain, and mostly just around how it ruins your creativity. I try to stay away from conspiracy theories and just focus on how it was ruining people's creativity, but I realized people don't care. I realized if it doesn't matter how many sources you give people, how many studies you give people, even if they claim to be very logical and grounded in reality, they won't care because they've been so programmed with school and everything like that. Now I'm kind of going off topic into like a whole other thing. My point is, there's so many things that are hindering our creativity and hindering our visualization, which and our imagination, which all links in, and I find it really fucking disgusting. But I want to just tell you, I want to tell you that even though that has happened to you, because it's happened to all of us, no matter how creative you think you are, it's happening to you to a degree. It can be restored, and it's just dormant. It's just dormant. It's not disappeared. Your brain hasn't permanently changed. So, it's really a goal of mine to figure out how to best get that imagination back and that visualization back. And my whole channel, bro, is really about this. And I know it's mostly about lucid dreaming and dreams and sleep, but it's really about that. It's really about getting that creativity back, I feel like. So I don't really know what I'm saying. This is kind of just a really unstructured thing. And I started going really off topic, but I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Do not join the Discord, unsubscribe from me, leave me a mean comment, dislike the video. I would like to hear your thoughts on that, truly. Goodbye. Goodbye.